Greetings, fellow travelers, vagrants, explorers, wildlanders, and welcome to episode 76 of the Retro Wildlands. My name is Nomad, and this is my gaming podcast where I like to share my thoughts and experiences with a video game that I've discovered or rediscovered while roaming the gaming wildlands. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. It's always great to have your company as we head back into the wilderness for another retro adventure, even if the temperatures around these parts aren't all that agreeable. Dee Dee, our trusted canine expedition leader, is already hard at work as usual. Today, instead of sketching out a map of forests and ruins, he's cleared off a frozen pond just outside the campsite and painted some very questionable lines in the snow. By my count, it is hockey season, and while it goes on for a while, I always think hockey when the temperatures are cold and the lakes are frozen over. I've always wanted to play a game on actual ice, which sounds cool, right? Dee Dee's hockey rink over there looks vaguely symmetrical, and the ice might be a little uneven, but you know what? It gets the job done. Good job, boy. Dee Dee absolutely believes strongly in simplicity, and honestly, I respect that. Meanwhile, Dexter, our ever-vigilant head of security and protection, is posted just on the outskirts, keeping a very close eye on things. He's traded in his sword and shield for a pair of hockey gloves, which just looks so adorable on his little paws. While Dexter has some years on him, I'm eager to see him out on the ice. He's all about settling things the old-fashioned way, and honestly, that kind of no-nonsense gloves-off attitude feels very appropriate for today's adventure. On today's episode, we're stepping back into the late 80s and hitting the ice with a game that a lot of us remember not just for how it played, but for how it felt. Fast-paced, arcade-style, and absolutely unconcerned with realism. Well, in some spots anyway. This is a hockey game where fights break out regularly. Goalies can be humiliated on a grand stage, and momentum can swing wildly in just a few seconds. Blades of Steel was one of those games that seemed to exist in just about everybody's NES library, I feel like, whether you're a diehard hockey fan or not, and I'd venture to say it's a game most people have at the very least heard of. For many players, Blades of Steel was hockey on the NES. It wasn't about simulations, or stat tracking, or line changes. It was about quick matches, some pretty iconic music, satisfying slap shots, and punching the opposing team until one of you collapsed onto the ice, at which point the loser was stuffed in a penalty box, which I don't think is how actual hockey works, but what do I know? It's a game that feels instantly recognizable the moment you turn this thing on, and decades later, it still holds a strange, nostalgic power over those of us who grew up with it. Personally, while I didn't play this game nearly as much as ice hockey on the NES, I played enough of Blades of Steel that the experience stuck with me. I couldn't tell you where or when I played this game, but you never forget getting into your very first full-on fistfight. You never forget the grunts of the players as they fall to the ice, and you never forget that announcer who calls out, "It's a pass," when you pass the puck to a teammate. Or were they saying, "with the pass"? Who cares? Blades of Steel had voiced commentary, even if it was only a few words, and that in and of itself was incredible. But does this game still hold up today? Is it just a fond memory, or is there still something genuinely fun waiting beneath the pixelated ice? Well, there was no way I could play so much of ice hockey and not give Blades of Steel a fair shake, so that said, after spending some quality time back on the rink, I've got some thoughts. Go ahead and grab a seat by the fire because I am very excited to dive into this one with you all. Now, if you're new to the show, I like to kick things off first by chatting it up with you all and give you all a peek behind the scenes here in the Retro Wildlands. Depending on what's on my mind, I might talk about what's going on with the show, what games I've been playing, projects I've got in the works, or whatever happens to wander into my brain and straight into the microphone. I'll also take some time to read and respond to any comments and thoughts that you all shared over on our social media pages about Blades of Steel, so the community can have their chance to sound off. Now, if that doesn't interest you though, and you're just here for the Blades of Steel experience, no worries at all. You can skip ahead we're going to shoot for about 15-20 minutes here, and then we should get right into the game talk. That is always a guess on my part, but I will be sure to include timestamps in the show notes so you know exactly where you need to go. But if you do decide to stick around, and I highly encourage that you do, we'll warm up by the fire, we'll talk some games, and get our expedition ready before we hit the ice. So, without further ado, let's kick things off with our opening segment that I like to call Campfire Catchup. Alright, first things first. If it wasn't evident by the last episode, I am so happy to be back. It feels really good to be back behind the microphone. If you've been around the Retro Wildlands for a while, you probably noticed that I took a bit of a hiatus recently. And I just want to start off by saying thank you, truly. The amount of kindness, understanding, and encouragement that I received while I took some time away was honestly very humbling. I cannot tell you how much that all meant to me. Stepping back from the show for a little bit was absolutely the right call. I needed the time to reset, recharge, and remind myself why I love doing this in the first place. And now, I feel energized again. I feel focused, motivated. I'm heading into 2026 with purpose, and that's a really good feeling. Right now, a big part of that energy is going towards making sure the schedule that I've put together and the workflow behind it all is actually sustainable. It certainly seems that way on paper, but I don't want to sprint for 3 months and then vanish into the wilderness again. The goal here is consistency, balance, and making content I'm genuinely excited about sharing with you all. If I can do that and do that consistently well, everybody wins. So again, thank you for supporting me, for being patient, and for sticking around. It means more than I can put into words. But I'll keep trying anyway, and I'll put that appreciation into the shows I want to make, I promise you that. Now, while we're here, I do want to take a quick moment to remind everybody about the new format for the show this year, just in case you missed my short episode where we came off hiatus titled We Continue. This here is sort of the blueprint going forward. Every other week, you'll still get the long-form Retro Wildlands episodes that you're used to. Deep dives into retro games or topics that I really want to explore, like my top 10 favorite things or what have you. That part of the show isn't going anywhere, and it's largely going to remain unchanged. In between these episodes, though, I've started a new series called The Expedition Log. This is where I'm going to talk about modern games that I'm playing as I continue roaming the gaming wildlands. Shorter, more focused episodes. I'm aiming to keep these episodes less than 30 minutes if I can help it. Think of it as less campfire monologue, more, hey, here's what I played, here's how I feel about it, all with the usual game music and sound that you're used to. On that note, Expedition Log number 1 just dropped last week, so if you haven't checked it out yet, I'd love for you to give it a listen. And seriously too, feedback is always welcome. What you like, what you don't, what you want more of, I am always eager to hear it. I'm also continuing to post new written modern game reviews every Wednesday over on the website www.theretrowildlands.com. So if reading is more your speed than listening to me ramble, I've got you covered there too. And speaking of feedback and staying connected, it's probably a good time to remind everyone that the Retro Wildlands does still exist out there in the social media wilderness. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. If you want updates on new episodes, new reviews, or you just want to sprinkle a little retro spice onto your timelines and feeds, why don't you give us a follow? I also mentioned the website too, theretrowildlands.com, where you can find the podcast, you can find some blogs, and you can find our YouTube channel all in one place. It's basically the Campfire hub. I mean, everything kind of routes back there eventually anyway. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about some games. As I mentioned in the episode where I counted down my top 10 games I played in 2025, I completed a lot of games this past year and took a huge chunk out of my backlog. 2026 is starting off well enough, though the very first game that I played and completed did not wow me in the slightest. That game is called Zombieland Double Tap Road Trip. I went into this one feeling pretty optimistic, which is probably a bad thing. The reason being, I like the Zombieland films, and I love twin-stick shooters. And on paper, this game seemed like it was a cool enough concept that I could probably have some fun with it. In practice, though, it was fine. Just plain old fine. Perfectly average. This was the kind of game where nothing was actively terrible, but nothing really stood out either. I actually debated whether or not I even wanted to talk about this one because it's so generic. But I did play it to completion, and part of the whole expedition log philosophy is chronicling my gaming journey for better or worse. Not every game is going to be a hidden gem, so I still wanted to bring it up to let you all know what you're getting into if you decide to partake in this game yourself. At the end of the day, though, sometimes it's just a game you finish, shrug at, and then move on. For anyone interested, I did write a full review for it on the website if you're curious about the details, but the short version is fun enough in short bursts, ultimately forgettable. But I did add another PlayStation Platinum trophy to my ever-growing pile, so it wasn't all that bad. And if you happen to be a trophy hunter yourself, consider grabbing this game if you got some time to kill. Now, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I literally just finished earning the Platinum Trophy for Dispatch, right before I sat down to record this episode. And I have to say, I cannot recommend this game enough. Dispatch is a narrative-driven experience with absolutely fantastic humor, genuinely great characters, and a story that pulled me in way more than I was expecting. It's clever, it's funny, it's surprisingly gripping, and it respects your time. It takes a special game to get me to laugh out loud on multiple occasions, smile triumphantly on other occasions, and even tear up in some spots, all thanks to the same experience. Dispatch is a game that I love talking about with people, and I really enjoy watching people play it too. If you enjoy strong writing and games that lean into storytelling without overstaying their welcome, Dispatch is absolutely worth checking out. This one stuck with me, so much so that I'll be writing a written review on this one soon, and it'll definitely get an Expedition Log extended podcast down the road for sure. And with that, that's kind of where I'm at right now regarding games in 2026. I'm playing through a few other generic titles to kill some time, but I'll touch on those another day. For right now, I'm bouncing between the average, the excellent, and everything in between. And honestly, that's just part of the fun. With that, I think that's a good place to wrap up our catch-up by the fire, my friends. Thank you very much for hanging out with me for a bit and letting me ramble. It's been a minute, I've kind of missed it. However, it is about time we get to the reason that you're all here today. It's time to talk about Blades of Steel for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Before getting on the ice, I thought it would be fun to start off with a little pregame session where we check in with the Retro Wildlands community and get their take on Blades of Steel. First up, Chuck over on our Retro Wildlands Facebook page chimed in and said, "Spent hours playing this game with my brother. We weren't even hockey fans, but gameplay was so fun and engaging it didn't matter." Chuck, you nailed it, and your comment really hit home for me. I feel like that's Blades of Steel in a nutshell, and that's exactly how my cousins and I approached ice hockey on the NES back in the day. You didn't need to know anything about hockey, you just needed a second controller and someone to compete with. Brothers, cousins, friends, it didn't matter. Suddenly, you're locked into this intense rivalry and hours disappear, and sometimes the score doesn't even matter. That right there is peak NES magic, and I love that you got to experience that. Next up, we had Caps Off Gaming reach out on our Facebook page as well. They said, "It's all about the fights, and a little bit of hockey too." Right on the nose with that one, my friend. Depending on your priorities, Blades of Steel was like 70% fighting, 30% hockey, and somehow it totally worked. I can attest to this, but sometimes you start playing and you're trying to play legit, and then 5 minutes later, it's chaos, gloves everywhere, and you're yelling at your TV like it's a pay-per-view event. Though while the fighting was arguably the best part, there was an element of strategy to fighting. The kicker is, you had to win the fights though. If you lost, you put yourself at a huge disadvantage. Speaking of the Blades of Steel fight experience, Joel from channel3.gg, who happens to be the creator of Channel 3, an amazing social media platform that you absolutely need to check out, had this to say. "The best fist fights the NES has to offer." Absolutely, 100% Joel. Like I sort of alluded to in the last comment, they were an absolute spectacle, but also a key strategy for top-tier Blades of Steel gameplay. In my case, though, I felt like I initiated more fights whenever I was losing just to make my skill issue feel a little bit better, but that's my coping mechanism right there. At the end of the day, hitting someone's 8-bit chin with my 8-bit fist never got old. Our last comment today comes from Channel 3 user Von Geen. Von Geen said, "It's the best hockey game on the NES. Plus, the title card still gives the chills when the voice says, 'Blades of Steel.' Speech was rare on the NES." I couldn't agree with you more on this one, Von Geen. When the NES spoke, it felt unreal. You turn the game on and hear that classic, "Blades of Steel," and it was like, whoa, games can do that? It instantly set the tone. Even before you played, you knew this wasn't just another sports game, but something far more. I may have been a kid back in the day playing this, but Blades of Steel felt more adult to me than some of the other games on the shelf, and it still feels that way to me today. A huge thank you to Chuck, Caps Off Gaming, Joel, and Von Geen for dropping their thoughts and memories with Blades of Steel. If you want to get in on the action, be sure to follow us over on our social media pages or join up with Channel 3 by going to channel3.gg. Before each episode, I'll give you all a chance to sound off your thoughts and have them highlighted on the show. I always love hearing how people feel about the games that I'm playing, so if that's something that you'd like to partake in, follow us on social media or head over to channel3.gg. Originally released in October 1987 in arcades before it was ported to the original Nintendo in 1998, Blades of Steel wasn't trying to be a hyper-realistic hockey simulation. Instead, though, Konami set out to deliver a fast, accessible, arcade-style sports experience, one that anyone could pick up and play whether they knew the rules of hockey or not. With its overhead perspective, simplified controls, and emphasis on speed and momentum, Blades of Steel focused less on authenticity and more on pure moment-to-moment fun. Add in some fairly memorable music, smooth animations, and the now iconic ability to drop the gloves and settle disputes on the ice, and you had a game that immediately stood out from the pack. But just like many early sports titles, that simplicity cuts both ways. For some players, Blades of Steel is a beloved classic, a perfect snapshot of late 80s design philosophy where personality and pick-up-and-play gameplay mattered more than realism. For others, it's a shallow experience, lacking depth, strategy, and long-term challenge once that novelty wears off. Is Blades of Steel a timeless arcade sports classic, or simply a nostalgic relic? Well, my friends, that's what we're here to find out. So let's gear up, Wildlanders, lace up those skates, tape your sticks, and keep your head on a swivel. The puck is about to drop and it's time to hit the ice. Let's jump into Blades of Steel and see where this NES hockey brawler truly stands in the long, ever-growing legacy of retro sports games. Going into this episode, my personal history with Blades of Steel is a little fuzzy on the details, but crystal clear on all the vibes. I have played it before, I just couldn't tell you exactly when, where, under what circumstances. But what I do remember is how it made me feel. I remember having a blast with it, and more specifically, I remember being absolutely obsessed with the fighting. Anytime the opportunity came up to drop the gloves, I was there for it. Wins, losses, penalties, none of it truly mattered. You know, looking back on it now, Blades of Steel might have been my very first fighting game. It just happened to be disguised as a hockey game. That said, the NES hockey game that I spent the most time with growing up was actually ice hockey. That was the one I kept going back to, the one I knew inside and out, and I played a ton of it with my cousins. Anytime I think about this game too, I think about my grandmother, because it was over her house when I was younger that I played this game a ton with my cousins. I also mentioned this in our ice hockey episode a few shows back, but we would spend so much time playing with different character combinations and getting into fights in that game as well. Over the years though, I found myself wondering, which of these two games, ice hockey and Blades of Steel, do people actually like more? And maybe more importantly, which one would I like more once I actually sat down with them both? Nostalgia can be a funny thing, and memory isn't always the most reliable narrator. So I made it a point this time around to really sit down with Blades of Steel, spend some quality time on the ice, and see how it stacks up. Not just against my memories, but against ice hockey as well, since that game is still recent in my mind. It'll be almost impossible not to compare these games as we go, so apologies in advance for any of that. Now, I'd like to think most of us have a pretty good idea what this game is. On the surface, Blades of Steel is a sports game, but the more I looked into this experience, the more impressed I got with the whole idea. Where this game came from, and where the franchise went, is pretty interesting. So, before we slot this game into our NES and play a match together, let's peel back the layers a bit and see exactly what it is that we're working with. So, what is this game? Blades of Steel, at its core, is an arcade-style hockey game. You pick a team, hit the ice, and within seconds you're skating, shooting, checking, and generally causing chaos. A standout feature of the game is getting into fights with other players, and these fights aren't just pixelated dust clouds like ice hockey on the NES had. These were powerful moments. Personally, while I enjoy watching the occasional hockey match in real life, I don't really know anything about the sport other than get the hard black disc thing into the other team's net. And thankfully, you don't really need to know anything more than that for this experience with Blades of Steel. This isn't a game interested in teaching you the finer points of hockey strategy, it just wants you scoring goals, slamming opponents into the boards, and reacting on instinct. It's hockey distilled down to its most exciting moments. Blades of Steel was created by Konami and released in Japan in 1987 in arcades before making its way to North America in 1988. I personally had no idea this game was a port of an arcade game until I did a little research, but now that I know that, it makes total sense. This time frame was when Konami was on fire, cranking out arcade hits and console classics across multiple platforms. Rather than trying to simulate professional hockey in a realistic way, the developers leaned into an arcade philosophy. That being quick matches, approachable mechanics, and features that would keep players coming back for just one more game. That mindset aligns perfectly with Konami's arcade roots, and you can see it in every design decision. One of the cooler things about Blades of Steel is how well Konami managed to bring the arcade experience home to the NES, especially when you remember how limited that hardware really was. Instead of trying to brute force a perfect arcade port, Konami focused on keeping what actually mattered. The NES version trims things down with simpler sprites, a tighter rink, and fewer bells and whistles, but that was all in service of keeping the game running smooth and responsive. Konami even found a way to compress the announcer commentary that the arcade game offered, and added it to the NES version. When you think about it, a game in 1988 had voices. It was incredible. The end result isn't some compromised knockoff. It's a version that feels tailor-made for the Nintendo. It's one of those ports where you can sit back and go, yeah, they actually knew what they were doing here. It's worth noting, too, that even though this is a port of an arcade game where Konami did a great job keeping the look and feel of the original, one of the biggest reasons Blades of Steel stood out at the time was its personality. When I look at this game, I feel like this is a game that knows it's a video game. The music was energetic and instantly recognizable, the animations were exaggerated, and the rules are, well, the game rules are kind of flexible. Penalties exist, but they feel more like suggestions than actual law, and the game's most famous feature, full-on fistfights between players, turns what could have been a standard sports title into something unforgettable. If you lose the fight, you're sent to the penalty box. If you win the fight, you stay in the game. You kind of win the crowd over, and the game itself seems to reward you for it. It's absurd, it's over the top, and that's exactly why people still remember this game. There is an argument to be made that the luster of this game tends to wear off rather quickly, but I think in my experience that might depend on the type of person you are and how often you play this game. Speaking of the game's absurdity, though, that reminds me. Of all the instruction booklets that I used to have access to growing up, the one for Blades of Steel always stuck with me for how over the top it was with how it introduced the game. Konami more or less baked a story into this sports game, and I always thought it was hilarious. You know what? How about I grab that and my copy of the game so we can get ready to fire this thing up? Just give me a second to grab that. Oh yeah, here we go. All right, let me set the stage by reading the opening section of the manual titled, Welcome to the Big Time. After a hard-nosed season in the teeth-smashing NHL farm system, you finally slapshot your way into the pros. Now, you're just another no-name rookie up against the finest forecheckers ever to grace the rink. You've got confidence, and with stick in hand, you're looking to bring home the cup, win MVP, make the covers of major sports magazines, and date a beautiful New York model. Not necessarily in that order. But you'll soon learn that in this league, nothing's ever given to you, and before you reach your goals, you've got to score them. You've got to possess both the artful skill of a finesse player and the bone-crushing brutality of an enforcer. You've got to defend the goal against unrelenting power plays. And finally, defend yourself when anger flares, gloves come off, and fists start flying. So strap on Blades of Steel and prepare to make a name for yourself. Or be put on ice by the hottest hitmen in hockey. The hottest hitmen in hockey? What the hell? Anyway, in true 80s instruction manual fashion, the stage is set beautifully, and none of that really has anything to do with the game itself. Still, it is fun pretending that we are that rookie, out for fame, glory, and one of those New York models, I guess. In order for us to realize any of that, though, we're going to have to suit up and hit the ice. Let's slot this game into our Nintendo, but hold on, before we do, as is tradition. There we go. You know, I've always wondered, if you listening were the sort of person that blew your cartridges, did you just give them one big solid blow? Or would you blow into them multiple times? Was there a specific direction that you would blow your cartridges? Like, did you start from the left and go to the right, or vice versa? Did you have a specific length of time that you would blow? Did you blow them with all your strength? Or were you a gentle blower? I'm sorry, I'm such a child. Anyway, no more screwing around. Let's grab a controller and hit the power button. As soon as the game fires up, we're taken to the title screen. There's no waiting around with this one. As soon as we fire things up, the Blades of Steel logo settles near the top of the screen just below the Konami logo. The title screen logo flashes. Blades of Steel. Oh, hell yes. Hearing the voice call out the game's title and then hearing that ka-ching of the logo undoubtedly got you excited as a kid. Hell, I know it still gets people excited now. Me being one of them, that is for sure. While I didn't play much of this game growing up, like I said, I do know that I lumped this game in with the small pile of games that I considered to be more mature than others, more adult. The official sounding voice, the logo, we had only experienced the game for about 5 seconds, but I knew I was going to be in for a treat. Below the game's logo, we have only 2 options to choose from. We can go into a 1-player game where it'll be us against the computer, or we can jump into a 2-player game and take on a friend, a family member, or a random person you feel comfortable enough to have in your home with you. Even though I didn't have the pleasure of playing this game with another human, it's very obvious to me that this game would be so much more fun if you played with a pal. Still, the computer makes a worthy opponent, so let's prepare to face it by pressing start on our controller and selecting 1 player. When we do, the screen goes black and then we're taken to the select game screen. Oh yeah, here we go. This is some of that awesome music that I'd mentioned before. While there isn't a lot of music to be had in Blades of Steel, what's here is catchy and memorable. Alright, so now that we're here, on screen we can see a hockey rink in the background. In the foreground is that game select menu. We can choose between an exhibition game or tournament play. Taking on a tournament has always been a big deal to me when I was a kid. In a tournament, 8 teams are placed in a bracket with the winner of each game advancing until there is only 1 left. If you lose a game in a tournament, it's game over and you'll be thrust back to the title screen with 0 fanfare. Tournament play is a fun way to play, and it can be pretty nerve-wracking. We'll get into the gameplay specifics when we get on the ice, but Blades of Steel can be pretty challenging, even on some of the easier difficulties. You might do well for a while and get a decent lead against your opponent, but the tide can be turned rather easily. For today, though, we're not going to jump into a tournament. Instead, we're going to take on an exhibition game, which is just a regular one-and-done game of hockey. Go ahead and press start on your controller to select that. Alright, from here, we're asked to select what league we're competing in. There's the Junior League, the College League, and the Pro League. Essentially, what we're doing here is selecting our difficulty level. The instruction manual calls out the juniors as the beginner level, college is intermediate, and pro is advanced. To be completely honest with you all, I have only ever played this game on the junior level, so I can't really tell you what the differences are between each option. Until I play the game more, junior works well for me. Matches are pretty balanced, where sometimes I'm able to get a sizable lead against my opponent, but often I can find myself losing my lead just as fast as I gained it. It's a perfect mode for me, and especially new players, so let's go with that. Press start 1 more time and we'll select it. Alright, now it's time to choose our team. There's no official NHL teams or anything like that in this game, but there are cities that you can choose from. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Montreal, Toronto, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Minnesota. Now, here's the first of probably many comparisons that I'm gonna make to ice hockey on the NES. While in ice hockey, you could choose a team and then customize your players a bit by choosing between large, small, and medium-sized teammates, in Blades of Steel, players are all the same with all the same attributes. The only thing that you're really choosing when you decide what team that you're playing as is the color of your team's uniforms. While I do like the idea of just jumping into a game and not having to think about team composition or anything, I do wish there was a little bit more customization available. In any case, let's move forward and select our team. Personally, I am a fan of Vancouver. Not that I'm a huge fan of Vancouver or anything, I know jack shit about that city, but the uniforms that they wear in this game make me think of the Ninja Turtles. Brown in the chest area, dark green on the arms and legs. Yeah, it doesn't take much to excite me. That said, scroll down to Vancouver with the select button and then press start to select them. Alright, lastly, since we're playing against the computer, we need to select who we want to play against. It doesn't really matter who we pick, so let's see. How about Chicago? Chicago works for me, if for no other reason than I like Chicago the few times that I actually visited it in real life. Move the cursor back up and select them. Alright, perfect. And with that, the game begins. Why is the game not beginning? Oh, right! For some reason, you have to press start again here, even after you selected the opponent's team. I don't know why. Go ahead and press start one more time, and let's finally take to the ice. The screen fades to black, and then we're taken to the Konami Arena, a professional skating rink. And yes, this hockey arena is in fact called the Konami Arena, according to the instruction manual. It's a 70,000 seat mega arena that's sold out until 2010. But lucky for us, we've got the best seat in the house. Center ice. On screen, we can see the center part of the ice arena. A lone referee stands between two archways at the top of the screen. Almost immediately, doors in front of those archways fly open, and both the Vancouver team and the Chicago team file out onto the ice. Vancouver on the left and Chicago on the right. Each team does a couple circles around their part of the rink, loosening up and getting ready for action. As we look at the character sprites, it's very clear this game is much different than ice hockey on the NES. Characters are much more realistic looking, and they all seem pretty imposing. From a color standpoint, it's pretty easy to determine which character belongs to which team, and each team doesn't really stand for any professional team per se, now that I'm thinking about it out loud. Chicago is decked out in red and gray, which I assume is a nod to the Chicago Blackhawk hockey team and the Chicago Bulls basketball team. I don't have any idea what colors the uniforms are for the real-life Vancouver Canucks, but if they were orange and green, then that'd be pretty neat. After a moment, we see a shot of the scoreboard. On it, we're reminded that this is a Junior League exhibition game, and our teams for tonight's game are Vancouver and Chicago. The atmosphere is electric, and this is already shaping up to be one hell of a hockey match. Let's head back to center ice where the referee is going to kick things off. At the sound of the whistle, each team meets at center ice. There's 5 players on each team, well, 6 if you count the goalie, which I believe is the proper amount for an NHL game. 1 player from each team meets in the middle of the screen, and the referee skates down to meet them with hockey puck in hand. It's time for a traditional quick-wristed face-off. Once the ref drops the puck, the first player to hit the B button on their controller once the puck hits the ice will automatically flick the puck backwards to their teammate and go on the offensive. This is obviously what we want to happen, so make sure your finger is primed and ready. Think you can handle that? Or if you're worried about the timing, you can do what everybody else probably does and just smash that B button over and over again and hope you get lucky. Either way, get ready because it's time.
Face off.
Now, hit your B button. Awesome. The puck flies backwards towards one of your Vancouver players, and they immediately take possession of the puck, and the game has begun. Alright, lock in, my friend. It is time to get after it. You'll notice that when you're on the offensive, and you have the puck, the player with the puck will be flashing. This lets you know that this is the player that you're controlling. Moving around the ice is simple enough. You can move in 8 directions with the directional pad on your controller. Go ahead and get used to that now. Start heading towards the right where Chicago's goal is. There you go, fairly easy enough. Be careful because things are going to get pretty chaotic pretty quick. While Chicago isn't going to bum rush you or anything, they will be actively trying to stop you and get the puck from you, so be careful not to bump into anyone if you can help it. Ooh, watch out, you got one guy about to slam right into you. Ouch, that was a clean hit. When players hit each other, they have the potential to knock each other back, and in some cases, the players can actually fall onto the ice and be incapacitated for about a second or two. You are still on your feet, so go ahead and just keep moving forward. Uh-oh, watch out ahead of you. 2 defenders are coming at you, and I don't think you're going to have the time or space you need to get out of the way. This right here is a perfect opportunity to pass the puck to somebody else on your team so you can keep the momentum up. Let's see here. There, you got a teammate just below you. Quick, hit your B button right now. Nice, that was smooth. Your teammate took possession, and now you control them. All of this gets even more exciting with the announcer chiming in from time to time, too. Although, did you catch what he said just now? Did he say, with the pass? Was it, it's a pass? Maybe it was in your ass. Pass the puck one more time, and let's listen. Yep, I have no idea. Personally, I go with the pass. But in any case, let's keep moving closer to the net. Oh, that reminds me, it is worth mentioning that when you do pass the puck, you will automatically pass the puck to the closest player on your team. Even if someone is open farther down the ice, you can only pass the puck to the closest teammate. I am not a huge fan of this because there are times where I am pretty sure I know which player is closest to me, but the computer thinks otherwise and passes it to someone I didn't want the puck to go to. So there were times that I inadvertently interrupted my own flow. Just keep that in mind as you pass the puck. Anyhow, let's look for an opening and set up a shot. Now, here's how shooting works. We're close enough now to Chicago's goal that we can see their net. When you look at the front of it, you'll see a little arrow traveling up and down the length of the net. When you go to take a shot, the arrow will stop moving, and that's the general direction that your puck is going to fly towards the net when you let it loose. There is no controlling that arrow though, so part of the game here is getting the puck relatively close to the net, finding an opening, and waiting for the arrow to be where you need it to be, and shooting. All the while, making sure the goalie isn't in your way either. It all sounds much more complicated than it actually is, but you'll get used to it, I promise. Okay, let's do this thing. Let's maneuver for a shot. Oh, watch out for that guy. Okay, get back on track. There, the arrow is near the bottom of the net and the goalie is near the top. It's time, let him have it. With almost lightning reflexes, Chicago's goalie moves down and blocks the puck. Ah, damn it, so close. A player from Chicago grabs the puck and we are now on defense. Chicago quickly takes the puck to the left side of the arena. They set up a pass and move the puck quickly towards the bottom of the screen. Now, when you're on defense, you can switch control to whichever Vancouver player is closest to the puck, All you have to do is just press your B button. There you go. That flashing player right there is the one that you control now. Keep doing this as much as you need to stay on that puck. Your A button doesn't do anything on defense, so you can't swipe at the puck or anything with your stick, but you absolutely want to ram your defender into the guy with the puck. With any luck, you'll knock them down on their ass and the puck will go flying. Ah, crap, they passed it again. Quick, hit the B button and get control of a different teammate. Nice. Chicago heads up now, and the net is in view to our left. Now, here is the hard part about playing defense. While you're controlling whatever player that you have control of right now, your directional button is also controlling the movement of your goalie. When you move up, the goalie moves up. When you move down, the goalie moves down. Same with left or right movement, too. You have to balance moving your defender on the ice while also trying to keep your goalie in front of that arrow moving up and down in front of the net. It's all pretty fast-paced and leans into that arcade feel, but it can be a little disorienting until you get used to flip-flopping your attention. Ah, crap. Speaking of attention, I'm taking too much of yours. Chicago is taking a shot. Quick, move your goalie down. The arrow is at the bottom of the net. Damn it! The puck actually bounced off your goalie's side and then ricocheted into the goal. I'm sorry, that's something I neglected to mention. Just putting your goalie in front of the puck won't always make them catch it. The puck can and will bounce off of you at the right angle, so positioning is very important. It's okay though, one lost goal isn't going to sink the entire game, and honestly, this is how we learn to get better, so let's let Chicago have their moment. As soon as the puck hits the back of the net, Chicago immediately starts to celebrate. They meet at the bottom of the screen, the guy who made the goal hoisting his stick high into the air while he's surrounded by his team. Yeah, what a prick. It's okay though, there's plenty of hockey left to play, and we might even get a chance to knock that guy's teeth out before it's all said and done. As a reminder of that fact, we're taken to a view of the scoreboard. Chicago's score increases by 1 next to the indicator for the first period of play. Now, I don't think I mentioned this before, but hockey is played in 3 periods. There is a timer in the upper left-hand corner of the screen counting down the time remaining in the period, and it started at 20 minutes. Now, the time actually counts down much faster than that, and if I recall correctly, most periods in this game finished up between 3 to 5 minutes in real time for me. It's worth noting that it takes just shy of 30 seconds from the moment the puck hits the back of the net to when you're playing the game again, so high-scoring games will absolutely extend that time. Which, that's another comparison that I need to make with ice hockey on the NES. You have no way to adjust how long you want a game to be, which is something that I do not care for. Individual games in Blades of Steel don't go on all that long, really, but I would have loved the flexibility. Anyway, a minor gripe, I am getting off track. After Chicago finishes their celebration, both teams return to center ice for another face-off.
Face-off!
B button, hit it now! Crap, Chicago got their hands on the puck. We can't let these guys score again, so quickly switch to the closest defender. Perfect, now get in there. Yes, now hit him again. Oop, heads up, he's passing. The puck travels to the top of the screen and Chicago keeps possession. Oh, look at you, already switching to the closest defender. Good work. Now celebrate your reflexes by hitting him again. Oh, nice. It was enough to knock the Chicago player on his face, and the puck goes flying. Now don't hesitate, grab that thing. Yes! All right, you're back on offense. Swing around and start heading towards their goal. Now, don't force your way unless you have a clear opening. Pass the puck where it makes sense, making sure you don't accidentally pass towards a defender. Excellent. Okay, you're close now. Watch out for the other team. Okay, move back a little bit. Now, move down. Taking some hits, but so far you're still on your feet. What's the arrow doing by Chicago's net? Perfect. It's near the top of the net and the goalie's near the bottom. You've got a clear shot. Now take it. Hell yes! Great shot! Suck on that, Chicago! Your team celebrates their score at the bottom of the screen while the Chicago goalie throws his hands in the air in defeat. I don't know how you're feeling right now, but getting a goal in Blades of Steel just feels good. It feels earned. Now all we have to do is keep up this momentum. Enjoy your small victory, my friend, but the game continues.
Face off.
Chicago gets the puck and immediately goes on offense. I think we pissed him off. But let's not give them an inch, though. Get a defender in there and knock that guy on his ass. There you go. He's zigzagging pretty quick, but stay on him. Don't let up. He does not have a clear line of sight to any of his teammates, and he's still a little ways from the net, so we've more or less got him trapped. Get in there. When you make contact this time, both players turn to face each other with their arms up. Oh boy, this is it. Smash your buttons, quick! When you do, your player starts punching the defender. The defender punches you back at the same time.
Fight.
The announcer calls a fight and the screen changes. Alright, this is it. This is what most everyone knows this game for. The one-on-one fights. On screen, we're looking at the two players that got into the scrap, one on the left and then one on the right. We take control of the player on the left. The view here is pretty close up and makes me think of a scene straight out of a fighting game. At the top of the screen is the word power, and on either side, there are 5 red dots. These dots represent the health of each player. The goal here is to beat the crap out of your opponent so that he has no power remaining. It's not going to be easy, and the loser of the battle is actually the one who's penalized by having to cool off in the penalty box for a bit. Fighting like this can be pretty fun, obviously, but it can also be a great tool in your toolkit. It's high risk, but high reward. If you can knock out the opposing team, they'll have one less player and set you up for a power play, making it much easier to score. So speaking of, that's what we need to focus on right now to get ready. Now, this isn't going to be like Street Fighter. Button mashing or throwing the occasional Hadouken isn't going to get the job done. This is almost like a game of rock, paper, scissors in a way. You'll punch by pressing the B button, and by default, you'll swing at your opponent's head. You can hold down on the directional button and then press the B button, at which point you'll punch your opponent's stomach. Now, your opponent is going to be trying to knock your lights out too, but if you press and hold the A button, you'll throw your hands up and defend your face. From there, you can hold down on the directional pad and defend your stomach. At the end of the day, fighting in Blades of Steel isn't really all that complicated, and honestly, that's part of the magic. When two players decide that they've had enough of each other's bullshit, the gloves drop and suddenly the rink clears out like everybody has collectively agreed, yeah, we're letting this happen. Speaking of, it's about time we teach this guy a lesson. And judging by the roar of the crowd, it's exactly what they want. Now, get ready. Alright, let's get aggressive right out of the gate. Press the B button and take a swing. Nice, solid clean hit to the chin. Careful, your opponent takes a swing as well. Ooh, right to the jaw. It's very hard to telegraph when your opponent is going to throw a punch, but if you really pay attention, or even just guess what might be coming, you might get lucky by deflecting a blow when you put yourself in a defensive stance. But really, while you can get by in these fights by potentially button mashing, I don't think that's where the magic happens. Anytime I would get into a fight, whether I was a kid back then or an adult now, I always let the roar of the crowd take me into the moment. You can be a button masher if you want, but in my opinion, the best victories are the ones that you attain with precision and perfect timing. That said, let's go for a gut shot. Nice, now the face. Ooh, he blocked it. Back to the stomach. Yes, can you feel that? You can feel the rhythm now. He's getting desperate, he's flailing a bit. All you have to do right now is stay calm and pick your shots. And... the last clean hit sends him crumpling to the ice. Yes, you have victory. The ref skates in, hauls him off to the penalty box, and you're left standing there like nothing even happened. No victory pose, no fanfare, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that you won that exchange fair and square, and now Chicago is down a player. The screen changes and you're back on the ice. You're up a man, adrenaline is pumping, probably grinning like an idiot, and that's the genius of Blades of Steel's fighting. It's quick, it's sometimes silly, and it makes you feel like an absolute legend for about 10 seconds. And I have to say, for me, those 10 seconds might be the most important part of the entire game. Now that we have the puck back, it's time to get aggressive. Use the advantage of the power play and get more points on the board. While I'm thinking about it, another thing that sets Blades of Steel apart from other sports games of the era is the inclusion of penalties. One thing Blades of Steel doesn't get enough credit for is how it still makes an effort to feel like real hockey, even with all the arcade chaos flying around. Penalties in this game are very much part of the experience, and while the game is more than happy to let you rough people up, it will absolutely pull you back a notch if you get a little too carried away. I only ever had it happen once or maybe twice, but it's possible if you get too aggressive with checking your opponent that the ref will step in and set up a penalty shot instead of letting you or your opponent duke it out. You can also get called for icing. Icing happens when a player shoots from their own territory and the puck slides the length of the rink past the opponent's goal without being touched. When the opponent grabs the puck from behind their net, the ref will stop the game and another face-off will occur. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe icing is mainly called as a way to prevent teams from just dumping the puck in a way that stalls for time. Plus, it makes the game boring if that happens all the time. I don't think I've ever had icing called on me while playing the game, but I have seen it happen. Now, if somehow the game ends and the score is tied, the game will enter overtime, which is where Blades of Steel really leans into the hockey drama. If the score is tied at the end of regulation, the game doesn't just call it a draw and send everyone home. You're going into sudden death. In overtime, each team will alternate, taking 5 penalty shots. Whoever has the most goals during this series of shots will win the game. I had this happen to me once when I was replaying this game recently for the show, and it was really fun. If you're the shooter, you'll use your control pad to aim your shot and take it. On defense, you have to hold the control pad in the direction you want your goalie to move and then press the B button. You only have a moment to make a decision, so you have to be on your game here. Every shot feels dangerous, every failure feels catastrophic, and every save just feels heroic. It's simple, sure, but it's incredibly effective. That sudden death setup mirrors the excitement of real hockey in a way that feels natural, not forced, and I wish I had more opportunity to experience this kind of gameplay. What really sells the Blades of Steel experience for me personally is how these systems all work together. The penalties create momentum swings, the power plays open up scoring opportunities, and overtime turns everything up to 11 if the game gets to that point. You might be grinning 1 second after winning a fist fight, and the next you're leaning forward on the couch, fully locked in, trying to survive a rally by the opponent or set up that perfect shot for yourself. Blades of Steel may be arcade first, but features like penalties and overtime help ground it just enough in authenticity to make every single game feel like they actually matter. Alright, let's check back to how you're doing on the ice. By the sounds of it, you're doing just fine. Fantastic work. You're up 2-1, and you're doing a great job of keeping up the momentum. You just need to continue to carry that into each period. Oh, that's right! Speaking of periods, after the second period, which I believe is just called second intermission in hockey speak, the game gives players something a little extra to enjoy. Oh shit, is it the end of the second period already? How long was I rambling about penalties and overtime? Well, once the second period ends, like it has, both teams will skate off the ice. In ice hockey on the NES, the Jambonis... Wait, did I say Jambonis? I meant to say Zambonis. In ice hockey on the NES, the Zambonis would come out onto the ice and resurface it, and that was one of my favorite parts of the whole game. In Blades of Steel, however, they do things a little differently. During intermission, the screen will go back to the scoreboard and a Konami promotion will pop up. Now, it's not just a flash of the Konami logo, there's actually a few things that could play out here. Sometimes you might get a video of a cute little white bear sending a puck into the back of the net. But the one intermission segment that I think most people remember is where you can actually take control of a spaceship on the left side of the monitor, and now you're playing a shoot-'em-up game where you're taking down a big spaceship. It is really, really cool, a game within a game, and this whole setup makes me think of the game Gradius. At the end of the segment, some of Konami's other licensed games will pop up on screen. For me, the logo of Contra and the logo for Jackal showed up just before the Konami logo itself. It's a fantastic cross-promotional idea, and I don't know if I can think of another game around this time that did this. I also read somewhere that back in the day, people thought that this side-scrolling game was actually a preview of another game by Konami that hadn't been released yet. I mean, how cool would that have been if that actually happened that way? Once intermission is over, players take to the ice for one more round of hockey before it's all said and done. We're to a point now where I've more or less covered the ins and outs of Blades of Steel. How it's set up, how it controls, and what it brings to the table in terms of experience for the player. Personally, I put in a good couple solid hours into this game, and I think I have a firm stance when it comes to this game and ice hockey on the NES. Ice hockey is, and will continue to be, one of my favorite video games, period. That game has its own kind of charm. The chunky players, the different body types, and a slightly more strategic feel when it comes to positioning and team composition. Ice hockey, to me, feels almost toy-like, in the best way, like you're pushing little wind-up players around the rink. It's simple, it's clean, and surprisingly tactical once you spend enough time with it. There's more options to tweak your experience, and I'll always hold it up high as one of the games that I quite literally grew up with. Anytime I think of ice hockey, I will always think of my grandmother and all the time that I spent at her house. Blades of Steel, on the other hand, feels louder, it's faster, it's meaner. Where ice hockey asks you to think about angles and spacing, Blades of Steel just wants you to react and be more in the moment. The pace is quicker, the presentation is more energetic, and the moment-to-moment action feels more dramatic. Add in the full-size character designs, the penalties, the sudden fights, and those high-stakes overtime moments, and it creates a sense of momentum for me that ice hockey never quite hit. One game isn't necessarily designed better than the other, but I will say I think at the end of the day, they're just trying to chase different vibes. But after spending time with both, I can pretty confidently say where I stand now. As much as I respect ice hockey and the nostalgia that I have tied to it, Blades of Steel is the one game that constantly pulls me back in. It's the personality, it's the chaos. Maybe it's a little recency bias, but Blades of Steel feels like an event every time I play it. And when I step back and ask myself which game that I would rather boot up today, it's not a hard call for me. The edge absolutely goes to Blades of Steel. Now, is that going to stay true tomorrow? Probably not. My mood changes on a dime, and that's a testament to both games and how well they were both made at the end of the day. My first match with Blades of Steel when I replayed it for this podcast stuck with me for how much of a nail-biter it was. I love chasing that feeling, and while ice hockey certainly had those moments at times, Blades did a great job of always keeping that feeling just out of reach, but also making it feel oh so satisfying when I was able to finally grab it again. And with all of that, I think that brings us to the end of the game. How did it finish up for Vancouver and Chicago? Nice. Final score was Vancouver 4, Chicago 3. Well done. By the time I wrap things up with Blades of Steel, any lingering doubt I had about how I felt was completely gone. This game still has it. It's fast, it's fun, it's a little ridiculous, and it absolutely understands what it wants to be. It delivers a pure, confident slice of arcade hockey that is endlessly replayable. Whether you're a longtime fan who remembers that title screen music by heart, or someone who's never dropped the gloves on an NES rink before, Blades of Steel is easy to recommend. Fire it up, play a few matches, get into at least one completely unnecessary fight, and let the game remind you why sometimes the simplest, loudest, most chaotic experiences are the ones that stick with us the longest. With the game clock at 0 and victory in our grasp, that brings us to the end of another adventure. This has been episode 76 of the Retro Wildlands
Blades of Steel
for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. This game was really fun to finally play through, and I had a great time with it. I love that a game from the late 80s still has the power to put a smile on my face. That's the magic of a good game right there. One that, regardless of when it was released, can still invoke some good feelings. Blades of Steel will be in my permanent rotation of retro titles for a long time to come, and I hope I get a chance to play it with another human one day. If you like the show today and you want to show it and myself some support, please consider subscribing to the Retro Wildlands on your preferred podcasting platform. Moving into 2026, my goal is to release a new show each week, with a long-form show focused on a retro game one week and then followed by a short-form modern game the next week. So, subscribing to the show will ensure that you're notified the moment new content goes live. You can follow us on our social media pages, or you can check out theretrowildlands.com for the latest on the show, check out some mini-game reviews and blogs, or even check out some of the videos that I've made or links to podcasts that I've been a guest on. The Retro Wildlands is also part of the SuperPod Network, home of some other awesome video game podcasts and other gaming content, and you can follow us over there at superpodnetwork.com. Other than this show, you can check out other awesome shows such as A Novel Console, Game Geeks with Bill and Matt, Press B to Cancel, The 3DO Experience, and more. There's blog posts, videos, and tons of other content, so be sure to check all of that out by heading over to SuperPodNetwork.com. Now, if you really like the show and you have a little bit of time to spare, I would love it if you could give us a good review or even share the show on social media with your friends. You can leave a star rating for the show on Spotify, but you can also leave that and a written review over on iTunes, Podchaser, Podbean, Podcast Addict, and I'm sure a few others, just to name a few. Good reviews and shares will help the show appear in more search feeds, but more than that, it'll let me know that you like what it is I'm trying to do here and that I'm delivering something that you enjoy. But, like I say every episode, you are under no obligation to do any of this. Just the fact that you're listening to my show right now is much more than I could have ever asked for, so above all else, my friend, thank you for being here. So, what's coming up next? Next up is another shorter modern game review, as Expedition Log number 2 is going to cover my experience with Super Mario Odyssey, arguably one of the best 3D platformers out there. I wrote a written review on my thoughts already on our website, but I'll be expanding on those and adding some great Odyssey music and sound to the next episode, so I hope you all check that out. After log number 2, I was trying to think of a game that might slot in around Valentine's Day that would fit the season really well. I had a few ideas, but when I went back and referenced the file that I have that I throw a bunch of my show ideas on whenever they pop into my head, I saw one that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I decided, screw it, this is the one. Plus, a couple other games that I'd like to do coming up require some decent game time, so this idea will help me work through a few games that I need to finish. That said, our next long-form episode will have me counting down my top 10 favorite female characters in gaming. There are a ton of female characters out there, and I've always wanted to highlight my favorites and see which ones you all like. To the ones who can kick complete and utter ass, to the ones with a tender side to them. The best ones make us feel something, and those are the ones that I want to shine a spotlight on. It should be a good time, and I'm looking forward to thinking back to characters and moments that stuck out to me after all these years. I hope you can join us again in the Gaming Wildlands, my friend. The expedition is never quite the same without you tagging along for the ride. Until then, my friends, my name is Nomad, and you can find me roaming the Retro Wildlands.